Common table expressions are another popular table virtualization technique. So let's take a look at those here. Now, common table expression, or a CTE, is really nothing more than just a more readable form of a derived table. Now, I've done a lot of live class instruction with SQL Server, and almost inevitably in that class, if there's 8, 10, 12, 14 people there, a couple of them are going to raise their hand and say, how is this more readable? I don't like it as much as just a regular old derived table format, and I'd rather do it that way. And that's fine. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a few minutes. But understand that a CTE, just like a derived table, is set up once, it's declared once, and then you can use it over and over in a query or a batch. Now, the best way to understand this is to go out and look at some examples, and we'll talk about whether or not you think it's more readable or not. Now, a lot of times that seems to fall into that category of, that's the first guitar I played, that's the first kind of motorcycle I had, that was my first car, and you kind of always measure things against that. And I think that's what's happening a lot of times with this readability issues on both sides. What we'll do here is I am just going to paste in the derived table example we used back in the video entitled Creating a Derived Table, because we're just going to rewrite this derived table example as a CTE, or a common table expression, and then you can decide which one you like best. And so now keep in mind, if I run this derived table, you'll notice that we're creating a derived table using this particular query right here, and we're aliasing or giving a name of dPerson. And then we're selecting from dPerson, which gets loaded with this data, and then we're putting a where clause of where the last name starts with I and ends with anything else. Now, let me run this for you real quickly here, and you can see what it looks like, right? So I'll make that go away. And then I want you to understand this is a derived table, and I'm going to create a whole new query. I'm just going to rewrite that derived table as a CTE. Okay, so let's just put a little instruction there, CTE. So we're going to start with the with command. All right, we're going to say with, and here's where we name it was CTE. With dPerson, we're going to get last name. We're going to put a last name column in there and a first name column. Then we're going to use the keyword as, and then we put our query that loads dPerson. So it's a little cleaner. We're going to say select last name, first name. We're going to pull that from person.person. We're going to pull this down, and now we have at this point created kind of the same thing as our derived table. We have a CTE called dPerson that has 2 columns in it, and here we're using the select query to load those 2 columns with the result sets of a select command from the person table, the person schema.person table. So now let's go use dPerson. I'm going to go right up here and I'll say select last name, first name from dPerson. Notice IntelliSense sees dPerson as a table, even though it's a CTE. And we will jump to the next line and say where last name is like I%, and then we'll close it. And that's telling it that's a wildcard, right? Saying anything that starts with an I. So I will highlight my entire CTE and I will execute it. And you'll notice we get the same result set we got a few minutes earlier. Now, here's the question for you. Which one of these is easier for you to read? A lot of people will say, well, this kind of makes sense to me. But notice that with the common table expression, you can see all of this. It's at the very top of the batch. It's very easy to see exactly what the virtual table is there. It's called dPerson. You can see instantly what columns are involved in it. You can see where the data came from that loaded that particular CTE. And then you get into implementation that uses that CTE. So your call there, but that's what a CTE looks like. That's what a CTE is. And now you understand what a common table expression is. Now from here, you can build on common table expressions. And obviously these things can be much more complex. The data right here that loads that common table expression or that puts the data into it can be join statements. It can get pretty frantic. This can be recursive. We can join a CTE to itself. We can do all kind of cool things. But for now, just get your head around what it is. You can go out and dig into the documentation later. But just know that for the purposes of the exam, Common table expression is what is considered by Microsoft anyway to be an easier, cleaner, more readable way to use a derived table.